Thank you for joining us for this overview of the Komprise installation process. In this video, we'll walk you through the components and the requirements for a successful installation, as well as provide resources and reference materials to guide you along. We encourage you to watch the entire video to get a comprehensive understanding of the steps involved and to ensure a smooth and efficient installation. So let's get started. We'll begin with an overview of the basic architecture of Komprise, including the core components and their function within the data center. We'll start with the director and observers, and we'll review their requirements for installation and proper operation. For environments with SMB shares, we'll cover the steps of integrating with Windows Domain and creating a Windows Default Access credential. We'll also discuss the role and requirements of the proxy systems with moving SMB data, and we on the requirements for the Komprise Access Address, which supports activities like data lifecycle management and tiering. At the end of the session, we'll review a pre-installation checklist and point out reference guides that cover the installation and additional topics such as analysis and migrations. If you're watching this as a video and would like to skip ahead to a particular component below, here are several reference time points for each section. If you're viewing this in a PowerPoint presentation, you can click on the section slide and this will take you to the relevant section for review and then bring you back to this page so you can choose another. So let's begin with the pre-installation review. We'll start with reviewing the architecture and then discuss the requirements for each component. We'll cover everything in the order in which it will be installed, so by the end of the review, you'll know what to prepare, what to expect, and have confidence to complete the installation. Our goal is to identify and address any potential issues before beginning the installation to make sure the install process goes smooth and efficiently. Komprise fits within the data center as a collection of core components, including the director, observers, Windows proxies, a default access credential, and the Komprise access address, all of which make up the Komprise grid. Komprise is an all-software-based solution utilizing stateless virtual machines in a virtual environment, offering scalability and flexibility. Working within virtual environments allows for easy expansion by adding additional resources such as proxies or observers or scaling back as needed. It also enables the option to scale up resources within a virtual machine, scale out by distributing the workload across multiple virtual machines, or what I call scale over by positioning more components at multiple locations across a large enterprise. For observers and proxies, the Komprise supports VMware, Nutanix, Hyper-V, and KVM virtual environments. To prepare and install Komprise, you'll find you largely need basic network configuration information for the VMs and a service account. Before we get too far, let's review common types of installations that we frequently perform with Komprise. To help companies manage unstructured data, Komprise combines many tools into one easy-to-use interface to simplify a range of data management challenges and services. We often see customers approach using Komprise from various starting points. The good news is that the installation process does not have to be completed all at once. It can be broken down into phases if necessary. One option customers often begin with is to conduct a data analysis assessment, helping them to understand their data and prepare a data management plan. For this, we typically only need a director and one or two observers. If the environment has Windows or SMB shares, the observers will need to be added to a Windows domain and a service account created. Other customers may choose to use Komprise solely for migrations, which also requires directors and observers, as well as Windows domain integration and proxy systems for SMB data movement. For those looking to implement a robust data lifecycle management plan, Komprise's transparent movement technology can be leveraged by adding the Komprise Access Address component. Our full product suite, which includes data lifecycle management, deep analytics, and deep analytics with actions, allows customers to thoroughly analyze their unstructured data and develop robust data management plans. Taking action is needed on a full share or directories or with very select data sets selected by a tag or a query. While it's best to eventually deploy all components, it's not necessary to do so on the first day. And this overview should provide a sense of what to schedule and when. Now that we have a better understanding of the components that we want to deploy, let's review their requirements. In the data center, we typically need general network information such as DNS, gateway, subnet mask, IP addresses for the various components. We'll also need some basic Windows domain information. This is very similar to the actions you may take when adding a new employee or a new service to the company. So let's talk about the director. This is the easiest component to deploy as Komprise offers it as a service and handles all the work for you. This simplifies many tasks as there are no on-site requirements, includes automatic scaling to match your growth, it's integrated with our Komprise support team, it's in a continuously accessible central location for multi-site support, and this also simplifies disaster recovery for site failovers. Updates are also handled by Komprise, making the process convenient and efficient. And to configure a director, you will only need to provide a name and an email address for the first administrator. We'll work together to select a director URL, which is typically your company name followed by .komprise.com. And upon your first login to the director, you'll be prompted to create a password for the site, and then you're directed to the welcome page where you can download the Observer VM files. It's really a simple process. The observers are the brains of the operation and handle most of the work. These are virtual appliances that Komprise provides in the form of OVA files for VMware, as well as the necessary files for Nutanix, Hyper-V, or KVM environments. They're easy to deploy and can be positioned to optimize performance and cost. The standard observer resource template includes 8 CPU cores, 16 gigs of memory, and 1 or 2 NICs. A second NIC may be required if there's a separate private network for storage, distinct from the public network where the observer normally communicates with the director. To ensure resiliency in the environment, we recommend starting with at least 2 observers. Each observer will need an IP address and a host name. When working with SMB shares, we'll need to add the observers to the Windows domain. Komprise provides a join domain wizard that requires a domain admin credential with the necessary permissions to add a computer to the domain. Joining the domain only takes a few minutes to accomplish. The wizard will handle adding the observers to the domain and can create an observer host names if they're needed or not assigned. Next, Komprise will require a service account to access the SMB shares. This is referred to as the default access credential. Komprise uses this account just like a normal end user accessing shared storage by providing a username and password when mapping the network drive. To prepare, customers will need to create this domain credential, which should be a member of the administrators group and the backup operators group. These groups provide the necessary permissions for Komprise to perform all the necessary functions in a full data management scenario. This credential should also be configured for the various storage subsystems to grant access rights to the shares. This will allow Komprise to successfully mount the SMB shares for analysis later. The configuration will vary by vendor and system, and we have the resources on the support portal explaining the steps to make this process easy. Let's discuss the Windows proxy systems. These are virtual Windows servers on which Komprise runs a set of services to move Windows data. To configure a proxy system, we ask the customer to provide 2 virtual Windows servers that have been set up in advance and added to their domain. During installation, we'll log into the servers with the default access credential and use a browser to download and install the Komprise proxy MSI file. After the installation completes, we'll then inform the director about the proxy systems by providing the fully qualified domain name or an IP address. The director will pass this information to the observers, who will then know that the proxy system or systems are available and ready for use. Most administrators are familiar with deploying a virtual Windows server, and the basic resource required are 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of memory, a single NIC card, and 100 gigs of disk space. These are fairly lightweight systems that are only needed to move SMB data and do not require extensive resources. We can deploy as many or as few proxy systems as needed and can add or remove them at any time depending upon the SMB workload. The next component is the Komprise access address, or we call it the CA. This is a critical part of the Komprise dynamic links. It serves as the root of the file system shortcut, directing operating systems to Komprise when tiered or moved data needs to be accessed. To set up the CA, we only need a single DNS entry with a fully qualified name and an unassigned IP address in the same subnet as the observers. The observers will maintain and process requests using this address. Think of the CA as like a shared cluster IP address that's passed among the observers. It's a key component in supporting data lifecycle management and transparently moving data to secondary storage while providing constant access for end users. The various components of the Komprise grid communicate with each other to accomplish complex data management tasks quickly. The observers communicate with the director on port 443. Before installation, configure a firewall rule to allow outbound connections to the director URL through 443. In some cases where intense security software is being used, you may need to also whitelist the director URL. The observers and proxies share grid communication over the ports listed here. If your security group has strict rules, you may need to ensure these ports are open and available for Komprise components to intercommunicate. Additionally, there are standard protocol communication ports used for NFS and SMB transfers. These are likely already open in your environment. It's important to note that the director does not participate in any physical data movement, and all the data movement occurs between the on-premise NAS systems. Even when working with storage in the cloud, all data is routed through the customer's local and WAN networks under their control and on their storage subsystems at all times. Komprise does not store customer data or route it through the director. This ensures that everything stays secure and customers maintain ownership of their data and subsystems at all times. Now that we've covered the different components and their requirements, let's review the steps to fully configure a Komprise environment. First is completing this pre-installation review, gathering the information and getting ready. Next, the director will be set up and you'll log into it and gain access to the director console. And the observers are set up appliances for the environments. Once the observers are in place, we may need to join them to the Windows domain if applicable. And this is where we can find the join domain script. The next step would be configuring the default access credential, and we do this in the upper right. This is that service account that we request that we use to be able to mount shares and work with them. Next, we're adding the proxy systems on the Windows servers. And lastly is configuring the Komprise access address with a fully qualified name and not the IP address. We've completed the installation process. We've established the Komprise grid and have everything up and running. So now we can move on to analyze analyzing stored subsystems. With proper preparation and installation, the process should take approximately 45 minutes and is relatively straightforward, as you can see. It's important to ensure that all the necessary information is gathered and prepared before beginning the installation of Komprise. To help gather this information, we provide a couple of checklists based on the type of installation. Having all this information readily available will make the installation process go smoothly and efficiently for you. Let's discuss other reference materials available. The Komprise Deployment Guide provides a comprehensive overview of the installation process, including the pre-installation preparations, the steps to configure the observers and proxies, and the credentials. Additionally, there are guides for specific installation types of activities such as assessments, migrations, and deep analytics. So now, to move forward with the installation, continue with gathering the necessary information and schedule a date and time with your Komprise team. Thanks for viewing our video about preparing for a Komprise installation. We hope you found it helpful with understanding the different components and the requirements for a successful install. Hopefully you now also feel confident about the install steps. Remember, with little preparation and some basic information, the whole process can be completed in under an hour. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions or need assistance with preparing. We're here to help and look forward to working with you to streamline your data management. So why wait? Let's schedule a call today to get started on your Komprise journey.